and welcome to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how to not do those things, but instead do meaningful, impactful things with our time and our budgets when it comes to marketing. And if you're new to the show, one of the things you also will experience here is that this is a place for exploration. There are no answers on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, but there are a lot of ideas that you can try on. The point being that there is not one right combination of things that works for all businesses at all stages of business in all industries at all times, yada, yada. While we might love to think that there's silver bullets for these types of things, marketing being one of them, sustainability being another one of them, that's just not really the case. So what we're going to explore, and what we always explore on the show, is a variety of things that you can try that may or may not fit you. And so the opportunity that you have in the conversation today is to get a new idea, try something on, maybe take it away and give it a try, create a test, bring it back, get some data, make some interpretations. But this is an opportunity for us to explore together through conversation. And so if you are joining us today, whether you're a new viewer or not a new viewer, we would love to see your thoughts, questions, comments, queries, perspectives, insights, all the good stuff in the chat. So really encourage you to get into the conversation, because today's topic is something that not a lot of people are talking about. It's probably something you yourself, if you're watching, haven't talked about, whether you're a solopreneur and you're doing social media marketing, or you're a business and you're doing the more traditional kinds of marketing. This concept of sustainability in marketing is a multifaceted conversation. And so we're going to start the conversation today. We'll probably end up in a place where we've opened a can of worms and not reached a destination, but that's the point. And so we would love for you to get into the conversation. If you have questions, even if you just have thoughts, or even if you just want to say, hey, please get into the conversation. We would love to see that you're here joining us live. Also, if you're watching the replay, please feel free to get into the comments as well. We get notifications after the show if there are questions or things like that. So if you happen to be watching on replay, please feel free to get into the conversation as well. With that, I'm really excited to have Gary Brown joining me today, because the first time Gary and I connected, he asked me questions about things I didn't know about sustainability. And so hopefully we're going to have a whole bunch more of those types of things here today, because I always think that when you have people around you asking you the questions you don't know how to answer, that's really what creates the opportunity to move into this version of ourselves or version of our business that hasn't been able to manifest yet. So I'm sure what we can count on is good questions from the sustainability perspective. So Gary, before we jump into the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and also why sustainability? Why did you end up there?
Okay, a little bit of background. I am a qualified CPA, chartered accountant, different terminology around the world, but it means the same. And I work generally as a fractional finance director for small and medium businesses. And when I went to a conference about a year ago, where one of the people was chatting about the whole principle of net zero, and it's always been something to me with the environment. The environment has always been part of my wanting to improve everything around me with regards to that. And was chatting about and listened to this about net zero, and I'd read about it and heard about it, and that was where I thought, oh, we all going to be needing to do this within our businesses. And to me, it's a case of how can we be sustainable as a business and actually make a profit and become big and grow to whatever we decide as an individual business owner. I'm a business owner myself, as are you, Tracy, and your decision as to where and how far you want to grow is up to you. Everybody's different. Maybe you want to become a PLC eventually, and on that basis, but maybe you're quite happy with the size of your business now, but you're wanting to grow. And that's where I thought, well, sustainability is, if you bring sustainability into your business, that just shows that you are going to be having something that your children or people can inherit from you, because it will be a stronger business, and it's taking into consideration the environment, and anything else which you want to have growing within you in the business. So that's where it came from, and that's now become my passion.
And this is one of the things that, well, first of all, let's start here with like kind of a definition of sustainability, because I think that the market in general can interpret sustainability in many ways. So for the sake of our conversation here, Gary, is there a definition of sustainability that you like to use?
I would like to go back to, before giving just a definition. It's more a case of, and I use the triple bottom line, or converted to which stands for effectively the three things: people, the planet, and profit. Now, if you think of a Venn diagram and you have these three circles and they all meet in one particular part, and that specific part in the middle where they meet is what one can turn around and say sustainable. So if all three of those aspects of people, managing the people you work, who your business touches, so whether that's a supplier or a customer or your staff or an investor, that's people. Okay, you then have the planet, and the planet is everything to do with environment. Whether that's saving water, reducing your kilowatt hours you're using in electricity, and all of that. And then, of course, you get the profit. Now, profit is not necessarily financial. So profit could be the fact that you're working with, you are helping to grow your community, because you're doing your corporate responsibility, social responsibilities, and all of that is profit as well. Get them all, you work on all three together. That brings sustainability for your business, that it will become sustainable. And that's my definition of sustainability. Obviously, everybody else's, there's a lot of definitions out there, as you quite rightly said. But mine is to do with that. But the main part to me, which is key, is the environment, and how we can build a sustainable environment outside our business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have a 6-year-old. I'm constantly thinking about what kind of planet I'm going to leave for him. Our trajectory is maybe not that great. I think there's lots of things we can do to improve that. So let's talk about this here, because I know one of the things that, as like a marketer, historically there's a lot of traditional marketing that was based around print. So things like newspaper, magazines, and like, not, these things aren't extinct, right? Like there's the newspaper is almost extinct, but we still have like community newspapers. We still have like lots of different magazines that are created. And so I think from a marketing perspective, when we think about our impact on the planet, very often we think about print and what that like print material or print collateral might be doing. But what are some of the other things, the other ways that like humans being humans, or humans interacting with computer screens, have an impact on our planet that we might want to take into consideration?
Well, I mean, you're quite right. A lot of it's moving away from print, and it's going to exactly as we are doing at the moment with this video, and there would also be audio with listening on podcasts and etc. However, the one big thing which, when considering with the planet, which going through with social media and posting on social media and sending a lot of the marketing out on emails and that type of electronic communication, one has to remember that sometimes this is actually creating CO2 emissions as well. So all of these electronic which we have, particularly with the cloud. If you think you've got these big server farms which are around the place, around the world, where everybody's working in the cloud, and that is also now eating and creating heat and all of and additional climate change because of that, and it's having to use water and cooling mechanisms. So that has an impact on the sustainability of the environment as well. So yes, we might not be producing much paper and not having to use as many trees and cut down as many trees to create the paper. But that's where one would be turning around and saying, well, why don't we do the recycling properly and then can convert that to make that more sustainable? So it's both. It's moving online, but there is still the high risk, the high moving it from one area to another area with regards and impacting environment. However, there are things people can do to save that and reduce the reliance on it. So an example is that if you're receiving emails and you don't want to receive these anymore, don't just let them go to the junk email. Actually go and unsubscribe from them, because that will prevent another email, because every email cost creates a carbon emission. So it's just simple things like that can be done.
I think this is this is one of the things you shared with me in our first conversation that I thought was so insightful, because there's a lot of people who consider themselves advocates for the planet who don't know these types of things. And so it might seem like I'm doing the planet a favor by sending out a lot of emails instead of sending out a lot of letters, because I'm only looking at that from like a paper point of view. But if I'm looking at my overall impact on the planet and I'm taking into consideration these things like CO2 emissions, then it creates the opportunity to have that conversation. Like if this is something that is important to us as a brand, maybe we don't want to just send out a whole bunch of emails. Maybe we want to be more highly targeted, or maybe we want to only send out an email like when something has been qualified, or at least, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other problems with qualification, but the point is that we have that conversation about what we can do because we have the information. And I love what Sarah is sharing here in the chat. We're going to be hidden up by this robust chat for a moment. How ChatGPT and other AI servers are huge contributors to energy and water usage. It's interesting, as we are constantly seeing the push towards using these platforms as a tool to strengthen a marketing team. How can we measure our individual carbon footprint through the use of these platforms? And I'm going to get to the like measurement component of this in a second. But again, I think that because there's so much knowledge now, it seems like now that there's so much knowledge, the ability for knowledge to get disjointed happens very quickly. And so while we'll say things like, yes, use ChatGPT, it's a tool, it will allow you to create content faster, it'll allow you to ideate and all of these things faster, which is true, not wrong. But also, where else does that come to play in the ecosystem of sustainability? And this might make and I think the thing that's interesting for me, and I don't know if this is just a marketing thing, but my experience of it is marketing related, is that when we do things faster, it doesn't actually make us do less things. So like, I was having a conversation with my friend Akam the other week, and we were talking about how now with Canva, you can add a drop shadow with like a click. But 20 years ago, you had to use photography and you had to process the film and you had to do layers of things and you had to do a lot of stuff in order to create a drop shadow. So the likelihood that you thought twice about whether or not I needed a drop shadow was much higher when the cost was higher and the time investment was higher. And now we're at the stage where everything is fast. So we don't think as much about like what that's doing for the rest of I'm going to call this Venn diagram the sustainability ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a perfect one.
Yeah, for the conversation today. And so we might be over here saying, yes, use AI. We want to use AI for as much as we can. And then over here being like, we want to save the planet. And okay, well, let's look at this from a sustainability ecosystem point of view, a holistic view. at to what point is there a counterbalance? And then they're like, are we actually saving? And then at what point are we not saving? Because now we're just, I mean, I think about the amount of time I'm in front of my computer screen. And since we originally talked to try to make it less, but like we're encouraged from a day-to-day basis to sit at our computer for 8 hours a day, right? And like what kind of impact does that have on the environment, and minus all the impacts that it actually has on people and our relationships in our community and all those other things. But if we aren't in the conversation like this to be able to understand like there is actually an environmental impact by us doing that, and if we're the type of people who are looking for baby steps to contribute back to the planet in positive ways, hey, maybe there's a conversation we could have about how we're using AI in order to make that possible.
Yeah. Well, definitely there is, and you know, there are some of the bigger businesses who are running these big server farms, and coming back to that whole thing of the environment and the AI and using that, which touches a bit on Sarah's question, is the fact a large number of those companies who run those server farms are aware of this, and they're finding alternative ways in which providing the power into those server farms and reducing the heat and emissions which are coming out of that. So on that basis, they are aware of it. So there's quite a few of them who are, you know, if we take Tesla, which believe it or not, Tesla, they have things which they're running there. I know Facebook, who have big servers which they run, and Amazon, they are running those, and they are finding ways in which they can reduce their carbon emissions within that, and not necessarily with water, which is the cooling systems which mostly use, but there are various ones. I don't know them all, but they are, you know, I've read some articles in which they are definitely trying to do things like that. And you're quite right. We're trying to find these various areas that you're going to, you know, reduce something over here because you're going to not print as much paper. But yes, we're now picking up there. But is it the same? What is the different measurement? Maybe we are reducing the amount of paper is reducing your total carbon emissions by maybe call it 10, whereas you increasing with your use of ChatGPT and emails and all of that only by 2. So you are overall reducing your general emissions, which is your sustainability, which is improving.
Right. And so like to get back to Sarah's question and this concept of measurement, how can we measure these types of things? Do we have tools today that allow us as like individuals to get a good understanding? Are there kind of baselines based on per hour, or I mean, I know like energy does a lot of kilowatt hours. So are there any kind of data measurement extrapolations that we could make that can help us in the conversation?
There are some. I have been through and had a look at some research of one of the companies, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the company name. And they have actually calculated with regards to specifically for every query which you put through on ChatGPT, they've calculated what is the total emissions that you are creating per query. And I recall it said that something that if you did, and this is bearing in mind that there's a couple of million, there's millions of queries which are running on a daily basis.
Right.
And I seem to recall it was, if there was 100,000 queries, was the equivalent of flying, and I'll use the London route because I'm based in the UK, flying from London to Spain and back again would be 100,000 queries is the equivalent emissions that is produced of ChatGPT or equivalent AI ones. Now that research was done a few years ago, so subsequently I think there's been advancement in the various server farms, as I was saying. So there could be a bit less. So it is a few years old, and unfortunately I cannot remember the off the top of my head. I would have to go off quickly and research it again, which I'm not going to do while we're having the chat.
If it comes up, we can mention it. I can also put a link in the chat for anyone who might be curious after. And I think this is, again, something that's interesting because our brains, I think, have this in like interpretation of what creates emissions. Okay, so you drive by a factory and you see stuff spouting out the top of it, and you're like, that's emitting something. We also don't think about like the amount that cows emit, and now we have more cows, and like all of these things, right? So there's a whole bunch of emissions that are invisible to our naked eye. So being able to just again be cognizant of when that is happening, and if we are trying to create something, you mentioned net zero at the beginning. If we're trying to create net zero, do we have all the data that we need in order to understand where we are creating output and how we are counteracting it with our other business decisions? Okay, so we talked about the planet, and that is one side of the three-way Venn diagram of the sustainability ecosystem, which I really like. I'm going to say that a whole bunch of times. Let's talk about people. So from a sustainability point of view, what are some of the things that are relevant for the conversation on the people side of the equation?
The people side, the big thing is to have everybody who's involved with your business. And I'm working on a small business, whatever. It could be a small business, could be a country. Okay, so it could one could be taking for both. So the principle is this one, that you have everybody who touches your business believes in what your business values of sustainability are and of and how you operate with your business. So if you're turning around, you're saying, I'm going, and we'll use the net zero again. My target is I want to get to net zero by 2050, which is a large part of the world. Most of the world have committed to that deadline. And you actually publish that and tell all your suppliers, tell all your customers, have your staff believe it and actually support and work with that. That is where the people comes in. And the moment you get everybody working on that basis, it will then work towards your sustainability. So bringing the marketing side in with that, when you are doing advertising, marketing, however you are doing it, whether it's via the old press, the paper, or via your email marketing, or via the discussions and which you're having with your customers on a face-to-face basis or on telephones, is to actually turn around and say, this is what I'm doing as a business, we are doing to become more sustainable and to get to that net zero effect, in 2050 or whatever your deadlines are. There's a number of companies who actually are trying to do it by 2035. So they've only got 10 years, which they're trying to get to the net zero situation. So the marketing part is there, is letting everybody know, and that's where the people comes in, that everybody is working to the same thing.
And I think a lot of times I think marketing is still also perceived as like an external communication engine. So which is advertising. But a lot of people are looking at it as just that, or like, I'm going to social media and I'm doing an ad, right? Like that's marketing. And if that is you and you would like to explore more, please reach out to me later. But because there's a lot more to it than that. But often too, even when we think about people, we think about like one group of people. So even in that sustainability conversation, you might think, oh, I just need to be aligned with my internal employees, right? If my internal employees are aligned with this mission, then we can make progress towards the mission. But what role do your partners play? What role do your investors play? And what role do your clients play? Because I think one of the things, this drives me nuts from the marketing point of view, is that somehow we think our clients, our ideal clients no less, have a different intention for their life and their buying habits. And so, quite often, organizations who do have some kind of environmental sustainability goal don't publicize that. But I'm always curious because look at companies like Patagonia, and they're like all about it, right? Like, and they've made it all about that from their advertising through to everything, and they have such a dedicated client base that believes in the same thing. Right?
Yes.
And so you might say, like, okay, well, that would make sense because from a product perspective, they're like targeting products also in that arena. But I mean, it doesn't really matter if you're selling a product. I'm losing all of my words in terms of like the sustainable fabrics and things like that, bamboo and those types of things. But also, if you're selling software, there's also people that believe in the same things as you. And if you can make it clear to them that this is what we believe in, this is what we stand for, this is what we're working towards. And not only can my product provide a service to you, but also we could go on this mission together to do these things. And if you're doing that and I'm doing that, let's go together and do the things. It makes conversations, especially sales conversations, infinitely easier. But we are like very rarely, I don't know if it's just well, this is just like a corporate value. It's not something we're selling, right? Like, no, it's not something you're selling in terms of a product, but the alignment is the word that you used, right? It's what you're selling, right? Your ideal clients are aligned with you. And if you show up and you say the things that demonstrate that alignment, then all of a sudden you also have a whole bunch of people who are like you that need that solution, that can go somewhere with you and you guys can go places together. So I think, again, like from a people perspective, it's very important to look at the holistic view of all of the people. And again, like it might seem overwhelming, especially if you're a large business and you've like, I've got like 200,000 employees and who knows how many vendors and millions of clients, right? But I'm not saying there's time in the day to have a conversation with every single one of them. But if we are being, so forget what we're doing because we're doing a whole bunch of things. But if we are being our beliefs to that level and our beingness is in alignment with our goals that way, then other people who have those goals want to be around you. They want to shop at your grocery store. They want to shop at your clothing store. They want to shop local, right? It's something that has become more popular since COVID. And in Canada right now, because of our crazy neighbor, let's put it that way, it's big again, shop local. But like, this is also something like, it's really interesting. I'll use this is a good example actually, because my local grocery store, which is a Canadian retail grocery store, which we shop at because my husband happens to work there. And so we support the business that way. It's a Canadian business and they now have like little maple leaves on all of the products that are made in Canada. So people can make a better decision about like, do they want to choose something that's based? They're not forcing you to choose what's made in Canada. They're still stocking things that are from other countries and from our next door neighbor. But like, you get to decide because you're presented with the information. And so now if I, as a person, want to shop local, which I'm like a farmer's market gal myself, but I also live in Canada where it's winter half the year and we don't have farmer's markets all year. I want to choose that. And so now I've been empowered by their business decisions to choose that. And it's made me more likely to shop there.
Yeah.
I enjoy my shopping experience there now more because it aligns with me better. And will that, I don't know today what that looks like from a like lifetime customer value or any other like marketing metrics point of view. But I do know that aligning with people never hurt a business.
Yeah.
And misaligning with them certainly can, though, especially if they think this is your value, but then what you live is actually something that's different.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with you that your values, you have to live your values. You can't have one and the other, and that's where it comes coming back to the people. That's where you want to try and make sure that all your staff and all your employees live your values within your business, so that they will be reflecting that.
Mhm.
But coming to just carry on a bit of that story with your shopping local and who is your target market. You
Mhm.
think about it as again, as the business are going, we're getting older. The what's it, the generation Z, or I'm not sure what the which is the right generation, but those people born in this century, put it that way. um, their education is a lot more to do with sustainability, and which I know for a fact when I was at school wasn't really discussed at all.
Right.
However, now it's part of their schooling, which their curriculums, and I'm sure it might only be a small part, might not be a whole subject, but will be full part of it. So by the time they are finishing school and going to college or university or whichever further education, sustainability and the environment and effectively the three P's are going to be part of their training. So there immediately, if that's who you're targeting to be a long-term sustainable business, you've got to be looking at the younger generation as they come through, because they will have those values which you have.
Mm.
And if you don't have those values of looking at after the environment and being sustainable, you're not going to be hitting a large part of the market, which could be beneficial for your business.
Yeah.
So
This is interesting because I was having this conversation, was it last week? Anyway, recently, in terms of like consistently, we are getting younger and younger people into decision making roles in organizations, and they're concerned about different things. And so theoretically, and this has actually happened in organizations, is that a new CEO will come in and they'll be like, sustainability.
yeah,
This is the new thing, right? We're bringing it. Or even, I mean, like anytime you have a new CEO come into an organization, it changes the DNA of the organization. And so as more and more young people who are concerned about these things, not because they are more concerned, but because they are being trained to be concerned about it, want that as part of the conversation and aren't just looking at the profit part of the ecosystem and being like, but we're like, we want all of these things. And I think this is something that I think you mentioned that this could also work for countries. Like,
yeah,
this is one of the things I think from a political point of view that there's greater opportunity for is how can we create something that's at the center of this triad, right? We don't want to get rid of people. We don't want to just fire a whole bunch of people because they're too expensive. Right? We all of these. I could get into the tariffs. We're not going to get into that on this show.
yeah,
But like, my husband is also in the supply chain, so it's a big thing in our house. But like, there's a bigger, more holistic thing, but we can only find solutions to the holistic problem if we're asking questions about the holistic problem. If we're only talking about one component of it, even if that one component is the planet, if we're only talking about the planet and we're not talking about the people and we're not talking about the profit, you're probably not going to have a business for a very long time.
exactly.
And so like this, I mean, it's the heart of it, right? The heart
Yeah,
of the matter is where the things overlap. And we can't do open heart surgery on a finger,
yeah,
right? That's just in one of the appendages. So this is about like bringing them all together and looking at everything. So, Okay, I want to talk about profit though, because we would be remiss not to talk about the profit side of this equation. Because when we're looking at things from a sustainability point of view, this does have to do with our business continuing to be in business. And therefore, we need to make some money so we can pay our people to do the things and keep us in business. And so, Gary, specifically because your background is in more of that like financial analysis component of this, I would love to know some things that you've seen in terms of the conversation that are meaningful to focus on, and anything that you have seen that you're like, oh, people always talk about this, but this is really not that helpful. Or maybe there isn't.
It's very difficult. It all depends on what the environment is where one is working. But one of the key things which I've picked up, and this I think is the first thing which falls flat when the economy or the area where you are, where you live, because it might not be applicable around around the world in the same place.
Right.
Is if there's threats of a downturn in the economy, then one of the first things which people stop is their marketing. And then they start saying, well, the next thing is I'm not going to be employing any more people. I'm not going to fill those vacancies. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to go and plant those extra trees, which I'm doing from with regards to the planet. And it's that marketing part which actually falls flat. And that's one of the key things which I always say, doesn't matter how difficult it is, you're going to be getting out of that doldrums or the bottom of the curve. And to get out of the bottom of the curve is you continue with your marketing. So that's the one big thing. But the other part is concentrating on keeping all the money to yourself and only paying off to your investors. And it's ignoring your community which you're in. So if you're in the buy local situation, so if you are in the buy local situation as the small shop owner, you say where your husband works as an example, if they only worry about paying the employees, so that's fine, the money stays within because the employees will be paid, and then paying big dividends to the shareholders, not investing further in the area around them. Ultimately, you then are harming both the people, because the people are your customers along the way in the supply chain, and you're going to be harming the economy. So you're going to be harming your business. So that is where it's the case of don't forget everything. Don't concentrate purely on your bottom line and your profit and your balance. Yes, I know big investors, that's what they want. That's what they're looking at. But the younger investors and the more value driven or the people profit planet thought process of investments, that side is starting to look and saying, well, what are you doing as a business? If you think about going investing, you're going to put money away into a pension fund, you often have a choice as to what type of investments do you want to be done. Do you want to go into green? We'll call it green for purposes of this at the moment, but if you want to do the more renewable businesses, that's where you want to be invested, rather than being invested in the oil and gas type business. And I'll use that, and I'm not saying that that's bad, but ultimately
I live in like oil and gas mecca. We know we still need oil and gas.
Yeah, we still need it. We'll never be able to stop that. It's just the quantum has to decrease, that's all. We're always going to have to use it, but it's the quantum which we need to look at decreasing. But that is where I'm saying that is looking outside. Don't just look purely internally the whole time at your finance.
Yeah, I think that's like super interesting, because I always think when we're talking about the economy, right, this is like the interrelationship of things, and it involves a money flow. Right? There is a flow of funds. And if we get to the place where people are like hoarding money because I'm concerned I won't be able to pay this off, blah, 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 like we're not actually contributing to the economy anymore, because we're not flowing the money. Like how I contribute to the economy is I get paid, and then I pay for my food, and I pay for stuff, right? The money flows. And if we're not flowing, then it's not really, we're not contributing to the economy the way we could be contributing to the economy.
Yeah.
But also, I think there is something about this, and maybe this is a little bit woo-woo for this conversation, but like the flow is about an abundance mindset, right? Like I give out, and what I give out, I get back. And I mean, a lot of people believe in karma or whatever they might call it for a spiritual reason. And if we're not giving out what we hope to receive energetically, then we're also not optimizing those experiences. And I think about this very much from a marketing point of view, right? Like people are creating marketing, quote unquote, experiences on a day-to-day basis. If you decipher that into content, yes, your content can be an experience if you make it one. But like if we're focusing on that flow of connection and everything between us and our clients and our investors and our employees and the planet and all of these things, and we let it flow, then the flow is open to return to us as well, which I think is important. Okay, I want to quickly, Sid is in the comments here, and the question is just ethical. So I'm not sure specifically.
I think I think he put that when I was chatting about with the fact of pensions and putting and investing, where you would put investments. I think that's possibly what Sid meant by saying ethical, that you're wanting to do ethical investments. I'm assuming that. I don't know.
Well, Sid, you can give us more background on that if you want. But I think, too, there is this innate connection that happens between the concept of sustainable and the concept of ethical. So, Gary, do you want to talk about that relationship a little bit so we can tie it all together?
I haven't even thought of that, to tell you the truth. So it's an interesting concept which you've asked there. And by the way, I see Sid has just said yes, he agrees with what I was saying. But with regard to sustainable, I think that is more a value. They both are. Ethical is more a value, which you're seeing that you are looking at an ethical value of of a particular business, that how are they doing. Sustainability is more an action, which I would say that you are trying to create a sustainable business which is going to continue. I always talk, I would do a lot of work with small business environments where it's a case of, is your business sustainable that you can go and take a 2-month holiday and you don't need to actually be there to do that? That means it's a sustainable business, that it's everything is working well for itself, and it's all three parts which we're talking about of the sustainability. And that's where I would say, which is your sustainability. Your ethical is more that my value of being sustainable, having a sustainable business, is I'm an ethical. I will only be working with other businesses with the same values or similar values to mine. That's my interpretation. I'm not sure and I'm sure there are much more other, a lot more other interpretations. That's my own personal interpretation on that.
Well, and I think we've actually had conversations about ethics on this show, and it's always really interesting to me because I feel like it's very individualized what someone would consider ethical. And I mean, maybe myself and Donald Trump would have different definitions of what ethical is. I don't know that because I've never had a conversation with him, which I'd be very curious to do, by the way. But not sure the energy in that room. It would also be interesting. But like, when we talk, I mean, like, we've done episodes on like AI ethics, right? And like, how do you create a framework for ethics in AI if every individual human has a different interpretation of what ethical means, and every person has, like, to some degree, the freedom to create what works for them, right? And that is one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was this concept of sustainability is to some degree custom for your business. There's things in general we can know about people. There's things in general we can know about profit. There's things in general we can know about the planet. But at the end of the day, your sustainability strategy, again, whether you are a solopreneur, a small business, a huge business, is very dependent on you and how you do business. And what does ethical mean to you? What does sustainable mean to you? How do you communicate that to people from a marketing point of view? How do you communicate that to people in the hiring process so you have the right team behind you? How are we not just telling the story, but living the story, right? Like how are we showing up to being like, this is what sustainable looks like? And it's interesting to me because what I'm feeling called to add to this conversation right now is that the fuel behind all of this is still people. We talked about AI but humans use AI, right?
Yeah.
A human is prompting AI to do a thing right now, at least anyway, when we're recording this episode. Maybe the computers have taken over in the future. We'll see where that goes. But this is a human thing. And if the humans don't have what they would consider a sustainable existence, if we're running in the marketing industry, when I graduated from university, the number one job everybody wanted was to work in an advertising agency. That was like the cream of the crop, worked at the big agencies. The tenure at the big agencies was 18 months.
Ooh.
On average, people worked at it because they got burnt out in 18 months. That, my friends, is not what sustainability looks like from a human perspective.
No.
So creating sustainability for a business really is driven by the sustainability of the humans that business is working with, those humans that are the foundation of the business. And so it's interesting too to take a look at all of these things that we've talked about today. The people. So as an individual, you also have people, right? You have your family, you have your community, you do have your work environment. Maybe you have a cool digital community like your business peeps. Maybe not. But like you have your people, you have the planet. Like, how are you trying to give back? There's a guy who walks around the lake by my house who's like always picking up garbage, which I think is a good reminder for other people to do it too. I recycle. I try to use less screen time, and like there's things that I don't use plastic bags. There's things that I do to contribute to the planet as an individual. And then there's also the profit from an individual point of view, which is also really like, let's consider profit like the money we make, right? Our income. And there's also stories about, like, if you're watching and you're an entrepreneur, you will have heard that the goal of your business should be to make $1 million. Like, who needs $1 million? Like, I did the math. I don't need anywhere close to $1 million to have the kind of lifestyle that I want. And that doesn't mean there aren't people who do need that kind of money, especially if you live in like downtown Manhattan or something, or even downtown London. But like, I don't need that. So I don't need to build that. And if I'm trying to create sustainable for that, that's not actually me. That's not for me. That's like someone else told me I should do that. And this is one of the things, crazy, stupid marketing. When we talk about crazy, doing the same things over and over and expecting a different result. And stupid being that just you're doing it because someone told you to, but you don't know why. That, my friends, does not lead to sustainability in marketing. It is not driving any of those three factors because you are not in it. You are not in it as a human and you are not in it as a business. And so this would be the thing I would just love to wrap up with today, is that when we're talking about sustainability, at the end of the day, this is about you. What is sustainable for you? What is sustainable for your business? What is sustainable for your team? What is sustainable for your profit margins? Okay? There's no global, well, there's always a global average, but there's actually nobody operating at the global average. Right?
Yeah.
The average is just average of a whole bunch of people doing not that thing. And so when we're looking at what does sustainability look like for us? Just kind of to like wrap up what we've talked about here today, Gary. Like, what are the final thoughts on how do we create what sustainability is for us?
Yeah, that's interesting. My thought is that, sustainability isn't, it's not just about doing less harm to the to the environment and all of that, but it's pretty much doing more good to whatever we are doing, which comes back to the values which we were discussing about. What is it? If you think about the smartest businesses we can have, and that this comes to us as individuals, are the ones that see sustainability as not being a cost, but rather as being an investment in their own future. And that's the future of, I was on a webinar this afternoon earlier. Sorry, being in London, it's evening at the moment. I really, and I know it's a lot earlier for yourself. But where someone was saying is remember, sustainability is the situation. Just think about it, is the people who are going to benefit today, in the future, for what we are doing today, is our children's grandchildren. So we need to start now so that our children's grandchildren are going to be the ones who benefit from we doing what we are doing with sustainability in the environment. So that to me is the big thing with why one wants to do it. And but it all comes down to your values. What are your own individual values? You were saying you do recycling. There's new laws which are coming into the UK which start on the 31st of March of recycling for businesses that have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to pay financial fines. That's how the government over here is starting to enforce it. So it is various different things. So if you're worried about paying fines, be sustainable. And if you're not worried, well, that's up to you. If you don't have if you don't have those type of values, right. I still see the whole thing with sustainability, and the three things is it boils down to your values, which you have as a business and as an individual.
Yeah, I like 100% agree with that. And it just reminds me of, I'm very often reminded of this quote, actually. John F. Kennedy, we all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children's future, and we're all mortal.
Exactly.
And if those are, I think a lot of times there's lots of opportunities to be divisive, right? From politics to whether or not you want pineapple on pizza. Right. And we can do that, or we can look at our fellow humans as people who cherish their children's future as much as I cherish mine. And other people might have different knowledge, they have different experiences, they have different values, they have a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, we can align on some of these things. And these are also the things from a big business perspective that I think once you get so big, people are like, well, what could we possibly agree on? You're like, well, I feel like there's some pretty simple human principles we could agree on, but like, that's up to you whether you want to dive into that. But I also want to just like quickly go to what Sid was sharing in the comments here about you can even go back to building your business model on your principles. I would highly recommend that, by the way. And the sustainability is a component of that. And it can be a laddering up, right? What sustainability might look like today might look a little bit different. Like what sustainability looked like 20 years ago is probably very different than what sustainability looks like today, because we have way more data. We have different things we're being taught. We have younger generation coming. Like it looks different. And 20 years from now, it will look different again. But our commitment to sustainability and being able to come back to that conversation and being like, what makes this sustainable? Whether you're talking about your day-to-day functioning as a human, whether you're talking about the day-to-day functioning of your business, or whether you're talking about the day-to-day functioning of your marketing department, all of these pieces are part of the puzzle. And if we don't include all of the pieces, we will never have a full view of what our puzzle looks like, and we won't have a fully functioning sustainability ecosystem. And so, Gary, if people are interested in discussing more about this concept of the sustainability ecosystem, where is the best place for them to find you?
The best place for them to find me is probably on LinkedIn. All my details are there, all my contact details on there. And my LinkedIn is, oh, crikey, it's Gary. I don't know. I can put the address.
Luckily for you all,
yeah.
If you're watching on LinkedIn, then Gary is tagged in the post.
Yes.
So you can just click on his name, because Gary Brown is a familiar, or is a more common name than some of the other names we've had on the show. But he's tagged in this post. So you can just click on his name and find him from there. And I would highly encourage you guys to connect, because this sustainability conversation is not just a 30-minute LinkedIn live where you get all the answers and now you can go away and like execute things. Hopefully what we've given you today are some pillars on which you can ask questions for your own business or your own personal sustainability. And once you start to ask questions, there will likely be another layer of questions, maybe like 5 layers of questions. So I really encourage you to stay in the conversation. If creating a sustainable marketing program or creating sustainability in any area of your life or business is top of mind for you right now, stay in the conversation, get into the conversation with each other. We had Sarah, Sid, Rogine on the conversation today in the chat. Connect with each other, you guys. That's allowed, by the way. Connect with Gary, connect with myself, and stay in the conversation about what that looks like to bring more sustainability to your life. And with that, my friends, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next time on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. And until then, permission to do you. I'm clicking all of the things.